um, applications, automations, and stuff like that. It's very tricky because design, music, art, these are all like an iterative process. And so this time last year, I dropped a project that was getting ready to release. I mean, we're now a year on, and what I can do in 3 minutes now is something I spent thousands on, which was to, it was called IMG Pop. And the idea was to pop the image, upscale it, retouch the image and give it like a reflection. So it gives you more of the premium look, because I think you get a lot of times where a lot of images are pretty dry. And when I mean by dry, they kind of, you see a lot of images on Amazon, you see the product and everything's stuck on. There's no natural reflected shadows and it doesn't look like a photograph, if you like. It's more like a montage. It doesn't look like a photo shoot. And that's not to send any shade or anything. It's just, it is what it is, right? Everyone's got a budget to work to. And I had to scrap the project because we spent so much time training images and the technology wasn't there yet. And this year, this is probably my fifth to seventh attempt to build something. But the reality comes down to is you need a human in the loop when you have a creative process like this. This is why a lot of the AI stuff that you see is very generic. I see people get excited over an output, which is good, right? You should get excited because we've now got this wonderful technology which allows you to build assets, but not necessarily have the ability to put it all together end to end. And so what I want to do today is I'm going to play you some stuff that I made as a non-designer. I have a design team, but what I'm trying to illustrate here is we're not at a stage where you can just go end to end with NAN and other automations. People will tell you they will, but they may have created outputs that they think is acceptable, but you're building these assets and creatives for a customer who's going to buy. And, it's marketing's important, design's important, conversion's important, but you need to meld them all together, right? Because art will meet science somewhere. And you can light your listing up like a Christmas tree. That's fine. My only argument with that isn't the only way. And I think that's a problem that we kind of face. If you look at the sea of same in a lot of search pages, I dropped a post just quickly yesterday, right? So everyone copied the market leader. The market leader was doing 14.99. Everyone was dropping their pants, killing themselves with PPC, and they were selling at £9. So basically what's happened is the price of imitation is going to be your margin. And as these tools get better and better, it's going to produce better output, but you're still going to need something with a human in the loop. So I'm giving this design system away. It's free, right? I will have to onboard people over time. Why am I doing it? Well, number of reasons. There's selfish reasons as well. But if I want to convince you that lighting your listing up like a Christmas tree on every product isn't the only way of doing things, and I can say that because if lighting your listing up like a Christmas tree was the case on every occasion, there'll be no such thing as failed products. So if you've got a product and you're struggling with a product, if you light it up like a Christmas tree every single time, you're going to get the same results in most cases, right? So in conversion is important because at the end of the day, you're running a business. We all understand that. But you get an argument where people say pretty doesn't sell. Not just dog shit with a bow around it, right? And tactics isn't design. And there's a lot more goes on under the hood. And this isn't the criticism, but I'm giving this away because our industry is struggling at the moment. And if we don't do some grassroots stuff, you guys are the superheroes of our industry, right? The heartbeat of the industry is the seller. That's who I serve, right? That's what fills my events out. That's what filled my agency out for a long period of time. sellers. So if sellers are struggling, what do? You do something to help them move the needle, because if you keep just taking and eating off their plate, the size of the industry shrunk. So if there's not enough sellers going around making money, no one's going to events. There isn't any service providers because they've got no sellers to serve. So for me, giving this away is a number of things. It's me giving back to the people that have given me 10 years. And I want to be able to do something that helps our sellers get back on their feet. I have selfish reasons, of course. We all do, right? But that's my primary thing, because if I can give this away to you and you pay next to fuck all to generate images using Sora and VO 3.1 for less than you can do it if you plugged in the API keys without subscription, then if this thing about eating with their eyes, i.e. the customer, is so important, what about if you've got a tool that helps you with those? What about if it helps you generate all of these assets? So what I want to do is, for those who don't always understand the design process, and you don't expect to, right? At the end of the day, everyone has a set of skills. And some people are really good at product. Some people are good at design. Some people are good at marketing. Some people are very good at scaling businesses, but it doesn't mean that they know this stuff end to end. And I look on LinkedIn and there's literally, when you see these things about flows, like the other day, it cracks me up. I go and have a look and I'm thinking, I keep fucking seeing that same post over and over. So you've got some clown who goes these insane N8N flows, do this, do that. And it's like 30 posts, right? And that's not just one, there's many of them. There's 30 posts of the same post over and over again, where it says, click and get this flow. If that shit was any good, why is he doing that? If it's any good? Because it's a lead magnet. So basically, he's bullshitting you. He's full of shit. And the last thing you need at the moment is more people around you that are full of shit when you're trying to get your business going, or you're trying to salvage your business. Because a lot of sellers, I don't buy into all the bollocks, right? It's tough out there. It's really fucking tough for a lot of people. I've just had a friend go bankrupt last week, right? 5 million only a few years ago, gone, right? Devastated. And that's going to carry on going until we're able to turn this around. And to turn this around, we need to invoke some change. Because if we don't change and if we don't support the sellers as we should be supporting the sellers, there'd be nothing left. There'd be nothing to fucking feast off. Because as this pie gets smaller and then the outside services, and I'm a service provider, this isn't a knock at service providers by any stretch of the imagination. I am one, right? I know where I sit on the totem pole. Happy to do so. Sellers are what drive this industry. So this is why I'm going to give it away, right? It's not perfect at the moment, but it's next to fuck all. And you don't have to spend money. You don't have to use it because you can give it to your designer. You can use it. Someone else can use it. Agencies can use it. I do not care. What I care about is the industry I love turns a fucking corner. Right? So I'm sorry I'm ranting at the moment, but this shit is getting on my nerves now, and it's time to change. We need to turn this fucking ship around, or there'll be nothing left for a lot of people. And it's okay for the 1%ers, that's fine, but that's only the 1%. And if you know anything about business, when things shrink and then it's just the chosen few at the top, the funnel, that towel gets ultra thin, and there's nothing left on the bone for them. So we need to do some more grassroots work. And if that means having the ability to have access to tools that cost you next to nothing to improve on videos, images, again, not perfect, but you get to do things that helps with the creative process, storyboarding, generation, keeping your costs low. If everyone is meant to eat with their eyes in terms of customers, then that's a good start, right? And then we can work back from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a couple of videos, and then I'm going to break the videos down as well, and I'm going to show you the assets. I'm going to show you everything, because I think you need to see, for those who think you can just prompt and it's just going to magic happen right now. Will that change tomorrow? Probably. I'll probably look at this video and they go, Dan, all changed. Good. I'd love it to change. The reason I would love it to change, because design, creativity isn't easy to do. Great imagery isn't easy to do, because you've got to combine conversion and design. And what is design also? It's trust. Yeah. So when you hear people, pretty doesn't sell. No, pretty doesn't sell if you've got a designer who has no clue about conversion. They're a waste of time. It's the same with musicians. If you've got a musician that sits there noodling, playing jazz, disappearing up his arsehole, then he ain't going to get any gigs. Yet someone like Jerry Halliwell from the Spice Girls can go off and earn 50 million, because she found the right mix between all of those things. It's not only just about talent, it's about covering the full circumference. So let me start with these design loop video, and then we'll start walking through these. So let me just bring it up onto the stage area here. Let's do this.
In a city that never lets up, 3 drops of oil, every rep, every push.
All right, so I dropped that yesterday. Again, not all of that is just a prompt, believe it or not. There is more work involved with doing so. Had to use CapCut. I'll open and show you the project for that as well. I'm going to play you another video that I did in about an hour today, and then I'm going to show you all the generation of the images and stuff like that. Now, again, it's not perfect. It's just a demo, right? But what I'm trying to show you here is, when you're making videos and you want to get emotion, the feeling and stuff into the video, there is dynamics. There's dynamic range. It's the nature of the music. It's not just the visual aspect. And there's a lot of work to do with nailing down and getting a good output and getting that to work end to end, right? So let me just drop this one.
Let's try out this new Striking Viking beard oil.
Striking Viking, Striking Viking.
Amber light upon my brow.
Okay, again, not perfect, but as I said, I've seen people call groundbreaking a video where basically the person zooms in and out, and that's groundbreaking. It's not groundbreaking, right? And that's not to demoralize or anything else like that. Like you guys as sellers, not many people can do what you do. It takes a high level of skill. When you're at the top of your game, that puts you in an elite bracket, right? You're very knowledgeable, but that doesn't mean that every single department is going to be, you will be excel at every part, right? So you're not expected to know everything. When you go into the Amazon community or into business in general, there are going to be certain things that you're outstanding at. That is your special power, or whatever you want to name it to be, right? So moving on, let's go into the software, and I'll give you a little bit of a run through, and we'll look some of the assets and stuff that's been generated, and then we can look at the project of how these things are then compiled. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hold on. Okay. So just going to bring this up in full, and then we're going to go into design loop. So what we've got here is I've taken a reference image. Now, in terms of the video, before we go into like images and stuff like that, with the video, we still need to get a match. If I go back slightly, I'm just bringing this out of view here. If I go back down to here, here are some of the images that were generated. Now, when we talk about images, and it's very common, we see a lot of images when they're laid out. Now, when we look at this, this could work on listing, but it could also work on socials as well. Now, when we think about space, when we think about premium, when we think about quality, you think of all the brands that you rate highly, yeah? And we have a lot of discussions about premium. What makes premium, okay? So people are going to have different views of what premium is. Now, it depends on your view, but when you think about premium, I'm going to give some exaggerated examples. When you think about premium, let's say you're going into a place and you're buying a really nice watch, right? Now, in these places, do the salespeople in these stores, or do the salespeople in the car showroom when you're buying luxury, do they behave like, and I say this respectfully, people that are selling double glazing at your front door? No, because to you, you'll go, well, hold on, you know, you're a cool brand, right? You're a cool brand. Why are you like begging? You know, and I don't mean to be in a bad way, so I'm just trying to be careful with my words. It's not an insult to window salespeople. I'm just trying to give the juxtaposition between what is deemed as premium. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be a killer image. You've got to test everything. That is a given, right? It doesn't matter what you do, because we've seen it before. We see images where they pack in all the proven strategies and it looks pretty rough, right? And it's taking up every pixel, because we, as a community, we need to stop the scroll to get the attention. The problem with that, if you are in the sea of same and everyone is screaming, no one's going to be heard. If anything, a bit of white space is going to draw more attention to the person than one screaming after another, right? So we have to look at that as well. And that's why I want you to take different views on things and test different things. I'm not saying I'm correct, far from it. It doesn't matter what I say. What matters is what converts, right? But if you don't test different things, and if you want to appear in a certain way, right, i.e. premium, so go back to the example. We talk about trust, right? Now, good design also helps with trust. Certain colors help with trust. But also helps with trust is congruency, right? So if we imagine a human was an image, okay, you would want their words to match their actions. If their words and their actions relate and they match, you've got congruency. If you write premium in your listing, but then like you're listing up like a Christmas tree and take up every pixel, do you think that the person, the buyer who goes, premium, then they look, do you think that's congruent? That's a question to ask for yourself. That's not me attacking or anything. I'm just trying to get you to look at stuff from a different perspective. Now, as we go through here, these are all generated off a single image. Yeah, you know, they're a bit AI-y. Yeah, that's clear. But what you'll start to see, that one, look, here we go. It reminds me of the old days. Do you remember the old Fiverr days? Look at that. Two hands there, one at the top with a pipette, little bit of slip there, Freudian slip there. So even with images like this, right, we know you've got to take up most of the space. There's no argument about that. But look, it's got like a reflection. Yeah, there's a bit of natural side to it as well. What I'm saying is that if everyone is doing the same thing and follows the same tactics, and they're copying everyone like each other, then what's going to separate you? The only thing that's going to separate you is going to be price. That's it. It's the only thing that's going to be separated. And if we look at, I think I posted this yesterday. This is an example. I'm not sure if it's clear to be able to see this. But when we look at this example here, we all know Zule Kitchen, right? If we look at Zule there, top of search, in position 1, bestseller. Now there's a load of copycats here. They're all dropping their pants. I know that's only one example, but that is where this is going to lead to, unless we all get a bit more creative in what we're doing and start to think outside of the box. Because if everything looks the same, it should cost the same, right? So how do you get this over? And am I saying it's easy? Absolutely not. It's far from easy to achieve this. Absolutely far from easy. It's a difficult thing to do, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, right? So if we come back over to in here, I've been building out with the listings. It's really important is how do we get this to be in such a way to have a flow? And that's why it's called design loop, because it starts with one image and you start to build out all of your assets. Yeah. So when you see these images, they're not all just like for listing images, main images. They're also for generating different reference images. So I've been building out a prompt engine. This hasn't been rolled out yet. I've just been working on the logic today. Now, again, this isn't perfect, but having the way this will work with the extraction of the image, and it goes through a process where it has the ability to generate a series of prompts under different types of images that you're able to edit the prompts themselves or just use the output. So it'll give you a multiple output. And when I say design loop, you know, if we're looking at this one here and we want to edit, we can just click there and it takes us back round in a loop to do the edit. Again here, this isn't perfect. You know, I was looking at ways, what can we do with comparing products to everyone else without putting a target on the back. So you've got here, you know, generic brand, then this brand. So we're experimenting with a lot of different ways. I mean, that isn't such a bad image either as well. And then we've got this one here, this one here. So what you've got here, there's plenty of variation in the images. Let's go back up again. I'm not sure if I can show some of those. But prime example, if we go into the settings here, these are my credits anyway, right? But if you ignore that, look at the statistics here. Credits used, 810. Images generated, 105, 7 videos, $4.05. So what it works out is in image gen, I think it's 25% cheaper for OpenAI than going direct. And then you've got Nano Banana is 33% cheaper. And in terms of video gen, you've got, I don't know, it's not 85%. Actually, it might be 85% because I got a mail today that the API, the company had an adjustment on the output cost. So that actually is increased, but I don't know how that is changed elsewhere. So it might not be absolutely right. So I need to check. But you can now generate output cheaper, but you still get to manage within the loop, right? Now, one of the other things we got here is having a storyboard, right? And then the pasting as well. Now, within this, it's able to generate stories based like a storyboard and then all the scenes for you, which you can then build out the reference images. And then you can anchor those down for the parts that you want to take part in your video. Depends on what it is, right? So when you're creating, and regardless of the output, like i.e., is it going to be for a listing video? Is it going to be a short on Instagram, etc., etc.? Everything goes through a process, right? So you're going to have the concept behind it. You're going to have what you need in terms of assets. Now, if you think about one of the biggest problems is finding a good designer, right? And you see what happens when people lose their designers that they love. It's very hard to find good designers who get it, right? But there's also two sides to that story. And the other side of the story is, generally speaking, is designers can't turn water to wine. What do I mean by that? So if you're not a designer, which is fine, that's absolutely fine, and you don't know what you want, the designer has to generate a load of assets to get a vibe or what you like. And once they know what you like, they can lock in. The other side of it as well, if you don't have very much in the way of assets, it's going to be very difficult for the designer or the video editor, who it is, to build you stuff that maybe you're happy with, because one of the biggest things you are going to need is the content or the assets that drive this. Yeah. And second to that is going to be the quality as well. So as a former sound engineer, there was the term fix it in the mix. And what that meant is don't worry about that later. We'll just EQ it and fix it. You can't, right? To have a good mix, you need to make sure that the drums, if you're recording, and guitar have to be recorded really well, because you can hear that in the mix, and they don't sit in the mix properly and it doesn't sound very good. So source material is going to be important, and that's no different to video, images. I'd love to show you, but there's a thing where I built some logic for a restoration of images. A friend sent me an image yesterday, said, Dan, what do we do about images like that? And I sent it back in like 3 minutes. So I was able to remove the background, upscale it, then it was retouched, and then the background was added, and then we put a reflected surface, and it looked like a brand new image. And he was saying, do you know how much we could charge for that? I said, look, it took 3 minutes for me to do. And I had to explain to him, look, with your reference images, you are going to need a good starting point, right? So if you've got a really bad pixelated image, it doesn't mean you're not going to be able to get an output, but you get a better chance. Why is that? Because images have dynamic range. They have pixels, they have depth, they have density. And with that inside of the image, what gets created from the source is going to be very important. So if we look at the videos that I just showed you earlier on, okay, they didn't just come out of me generating the video here, right? I had to generate them as assets, because it's not possible to do what I showed you, right? So for instance, these videos here, 8 seconds long, right? And you won't be able to hear it through the shared screen, but the timing and pacing, whilst okay, you have got to understand that depending on what music you've got, the person has to sit in time, right? It has to be locked in on the beat or just in front of the snare. It depends on what the cadence is and how the person is meant to sit on top of the drums, and how the drums sit in terms of rhythmic patterns, right? If they're syncopated and stuff like that. But that is the stuff that AI can't do, right? And then generally speaking, the longer the video, the more artifacts and problems you're going to face. And pacing is going to be difficult, because I purposely played that video earlier on. It's very dramatic, and I can make that dramatic. If you don't know about video creation and stuff like that, that's absolutely fine. But a lot of it is dynamic range is coming from what the music does and the resonance with the music and how it sits with the visuals. And so you have to get that sitting in the pocket, or it sounds really odd. You know, if you've ever been out and you've heard DJs and they're mixing and it all sounds out of time, the clanging, you get that as well with videos, but sometimes you're not always fully conscious of it. You just know it seems odd, it's off, you don't like it, right? Because these have to come together and fit like a glove, right? Or otherwise it starts to sound like a someone wearing an armored suit and falling down the stairs of a lighthouse, right? Sounds really bad. So when you're making and trying to create an emotional reaction from somewhere, then there are going to be things that you do. Orchestral drums, right? You tribal drums could be one of them. You might use synths that with stabs, like stab sounds in the background. You want it melodic, you might use strings and a piano. You might just have a voice, right? And a choir. It really depends on what the emotions that you're trying to evoke. And when you start to think about that, and then you think about when a scene changes, expecting it to come from a single prompt and then generate this is almost going to be impossible, right? And I say that because I've seen how far forward we've moved with image and video. It's really impressive. Now, if you think about it, what I'm explaining here, this has the opportunity to generate you a huge volume of assets, right? And even if you don't have an amazing designer, having an asset library where an okay designer and an okay video editor, right, can do their work, they've got great source material to work from. And with the great source material, you're going to get a better outcome. And if you feel that you know, because design and art and music's subjective, right? Some people don't like it. It depends what resonates with you. But it's an opportunity by having the human in the loop, you've got this guidance part. So another example, going back to coming up with specs for design and stuff like that, they're not always easy if that's not your world. But I've been trying to build in things like the new prompt engine, which I'll add as part of this, is how do we combine all these together if you're not necessarily that way inclined, but you still want to produce good content, or you still want to give it to your designer and they might not be top level, but they're good enough to work with good content. Yeah. And if you can then understand also is, you know, removing the backgrounds, upscaling an image, you know, and understanding what order that goes in, this means is that you start to get better images from the very beginning. So going back to the point, and I'm not ragging on this, meaning, you know, light up like a Christmas tree, but sometimes less is more, but everything needs to be tested, right? There's no perfect way to do it, but there's also not a single way to do it. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff just go, yeah, whack that in there, go on, nice call out, yeah, wallop, we'll do that. Why ain't that converting? Oh, don't worry, we'll just take that call out off and put that call out in there, and yeah, stick a few props in there, and that's where we get to, right? And that's what we got to kind of get away from, because as sellers who want to be these premium brands, we have to start looking at what premium brands do, and like the premium brands, look at it as, are we congruent with the premium brands? You know, do we reflect that, or are we crossing paths? I mean, in some cases, are we going, we're like Apple, yet our marketing looks like, you know, tilted towards long landing pages, affiliate style marketing? It's not going to vibe together, right? It's working out, what is your voice? What is your style? What does your brand represent? Is it congruent all the way through? And does this marketing style work for what I'm trying to achieve as a brand and what I'm trying to get over as a brand? So the videos I played you have just got these 8 seconds. Yeah, we can extend the video. Great. The problem is when you start to extend the videos as well, you're going to have overlap with the music, and the music isn't always going to be in line where the cut comes for the change of scene. So you still have to do some work on it to meet those, but it's not heavy lifting work that you have to do, because you can use CapCut, $10 a month or whatever it is, $15 what I use. And I'll show you in a sec. I'll pull up CapCut so you can have a look. So what I used here was a few of these videos, and I took out some of the good points, right? So this one here, shitty hands. Look, that's zooming in, right? This isn't, just so that you know, that's not magic. I mean, it's a good image, but this thing here, this is just something moving in and out on the canvas. It's not impressive, what you think, but it might seem impressive if you've never seen that before, and because it's generating an output. But what you got to think of, taking me and you out of the conversation, what really matters, does the person buy it? Do they resonate? Because the rest doesn't matter, right? But if you start to think of it in how do we put our best foot forward? So being able to generate a lot of assets, okay? Having assets that doesn't cost you a huge amount of money. Again, you can see here, right? Images. There's 105 images generated across everything. Now, you might not like all of these images. I certainly don't, right? But when we go back and we start to look at the images that are generated, even if these images are only a start point, okay? I mean, if someone said, can you do all my images? I've got a beard oil brand, right? And then they gave you those for $4.30, right? And by the way, these images, I generated these purposely for the style of the video so that we had the product in the video. It wasn't just the same image over and over again. And we can give it different looks. So if you can find a designer out there who will do all this for $4.80 or whatever it is, then fantastic. I'm not sure if you can, right? Ignore these ones, they're wrong. And it's just been experimenting. Okay, it's coming up with ideas. Why do I say that? Because you can then give these to any designer who's half decent with Photoshop, and they can clean these up. Look, that looks terrible, right? That reminds me of Fiverr a few years ago. Yeah, so it's working out. That's why you got to strip off the backgrounds and clean up the images and remove all those. So when you do combine the images together, they look natural. Like this guy's here, look, his shoulders there. He obviously ain't been in the gym, has he? That one's okay. But I had to take some work to get this right, and he still looks like a bit of a bruiser. But let's come down to here. We'll go to some of these images. Again, using space, right? They're not necessarily perfect, but these can give you more of a premium feel than say, composite of images where you've got all loads of text everywhere, right? Now, I know we're selling, but let me bring back another thing, is the importance of this. Do you remember when banners were a thing? We're going back 2 decades now, right? There was a period, early 2000s, where you could argue that banners work. Now what happened, from a period of time, they got brighter and they got louder. And what happened? What were they trying to achieve? Banners were trying to achieve for you, disruptive, to what? Stop the scroll. But it got to such a point that what did people get? Banner blindness. So if we look at what we do to stop the scroll, what happens if we have our own version of banner blindness? Then no one's going to buy it. Your click-through rate's going to go down, right? And I know it's different because they've got shoppers on Amazon. It's a different intent. I get that. I'm just trying to give you an example, is that stopping the scroll isn't always the loudest. It's the same with the person in the room. The loudest in the room generally is not what you think. Yeah, I won't use the words because it will start to piss people off. But, you know, they often say, I didn't say that, but they often say the loudest in the room is generally the weakest, right? Because they've got more to prove and they're loud because they're overcompensating. So when you look at, people would also describe power isn't loud, right? It doesn't have to announce itself. You feel its presence. So if you think the presence of white space that can work, right? And I know there's wincing people there. There's people looking at these go, fuck off, Dan. I need to stick a little bow up here. We need to put a text there. We need to do that. But what if you don't? What if you didn't? What if you didn't do what everyone has told you to do, and you tried and test different things, right? We're now in an age where we can afford to test a lot more, right? So now you're seeing a lot of the stuff produced. Some of you have produced better. These are just images, right? It's like, don't take long to do these. But I'm trying to build this so that people have, and it doesn't matter who it is, it's not an exclusive club. It's here for everyone because I want to see everyone win. So I'll be sending out some mails. I'll set up a wait list because we need to let people in groups. The reason being, you don't want to just have it, people come in, the API falls over and no one uses it. It's pointless. So the first group of people will be, of course, the sellers who bought tickets for seller sessions in May for May next year. They will get access, and of course the workshop that we've got coming up in 4 weeks in London on December the 1st. So I'll roll out to them first. We'll make sure that it's working with them. It'll give me a chance to implement some of the other tech that I'm building to go in with it to help with the loop process. Because the idea is I want you to be able to work fast in a flow, or at least your designer to work fast in a flow. So the example, these images here, right? These took 10 minutes to generate. And I generated them because obviously I needed assets for the project. So if we look at the project here, this is the videos I played from earlier on. Now, these are all the files that were generated to be able to throw them into the project. Now, I don't think the audio will play out through here. But as you can see here, if we open this out, there's a lot going on in here, right? This image here, and you can see I'm just chopping fast, right? Because it allows to reduce some of the artifacts. Now, I know people go, yeah, but it is, you know, it's still a bit AI. But imagine if I just play the straight 8-second bar, right? I say 8-second bar, I'm thinking of music. But if I just play this here, you may not be able to. His voice there is still got timbral artifacts. Now you can get someone to re-record that. It's still not there. Like when I think about the audio, the images, the video isn't too bad, and you can see certain things. And yeah, this looks good, right? It's just, but this isn't like, to me, this isn't a video. This is a clip, right? This is a bit that you can drop in. You drop at the end of a certain section to change the direction of the video, or, you know, whatever you are working on. But having the ability to have in all of these different assets that you can generate really fast, you know, I mean, how long would you spend working on that? I'm not saying it's brilliant, but it looks pretty good. And when you've got flashes like this is where the dynamics come. Okay. Now, if we come down to here, these are drums that I've used, and I've overlaid drums. I've just used the drums. You go to audio and then just search for drums. And that's where I got the drama behind it, because that wasn't come from the video. Whilst there are some light drums and stuff in there are parts here you can see, look, in order to get this transition to work, I've had to fade, right? So there's a fade come here, and then there's the change. Now what happens, all that is this is all dragging and dropping. So when I'm showing you this isn't rocket science. I'm not a video editor, right? This is pretty basic stuff. If you can pick this up and drag it, you're halfway there, right? If you can hear this, hold on. If you can get to here and go, that doesn't sound right. Why don't I go up here, right? And go to my transitions, and I'll go and do an effect. So we can play around with this because this is just a throwaway demo, right? So this is, once you start to bring in the music and the edit, it will able to get that dramatic effect when you want to change and have a turn of pace there, right? But all you've got to do is just drag some of these parts in. But without all of these things, it doesn't matter that I've done all this. What really matters is not me picking up and being able to do that, right? And cutting and pasting. What matters is, can I generate a lot of half decent content, assets, source material? And if I can, fantastic, because that means I've got a better chance of making a better video, right? So you can see I've also thrown in some light ones here, but in order to make it more dramatic, which was the intent of this, is having all of these assets where I just throw them in. Yeah. And even for the change here, right? This bit here, which you won't hear, this section here is where it drops to silence. It's amazing what you can do when you take out versus what you add in. And in order to smooth its path, these two here are drum fills. So this will come to the end part here because I want to change the direction of where we're going with this. So if you notice there, I just use nothing. It went to black. I didn't put anything. I didn't try and fill the gap. What I wanted to do is create a gap to create suspense, right? And you can see there's 4 flashes or 3 changes of images. And what's happened here, it will play back on the video, because we'll play it back again in a sec. You'll start to hear what I'm showing you and you go, oh, okay, I get it now, if you've not done video editing and stuff. So you can see all these generation of images. I haven't got to use the same one over and over again. So I'm using still and moving. When I'm using still and moving, I'm also just dragging and dropping effects, right? There's an effect here. Okay, if I move that out of the way, yeah, you want to keep some semblance of moving and keep the interest to the eye of the person watching. Yeah, and then there's sometimes when you have a change of pace as well, you can take the drums out, right? So you can just slide that back, for instance. And then what's happened is the vocal part there, where I've created that gap, allows, like white space in an image, it allows for that to then create more dramatic, dynamic impact. So now that you've seen the inside of the project, this may help you understand why N8N flows, whilst brilliant, whilst good, I use N8N as well. If you're looking to do something of a creative nature and are expecting end-to-end output with it to be of any decent quality that's acceptable by the customer, not by the marketer or whoever is creating them, and again, this isn't any shade, you're not going to get what you want because it isn't possible yet to do these things. So you're still going to need human in the loop to get where you want to go, but you'll be able to cover these factors up by having a good designer, an editor, doing it yourself, and then you combine all these elements together. Because what I don't want you to do, I don't want you to sit there prompting all day and going, why doesn't that not work like that Hollywood movie trailer with Denzel Washington? I just don't get it. Maybe I just need to change the prompt. No, it's not possible. So I don't want you to go down that road. And I'm not saying it to put you off. I'm saying it because I don't want your time wasted. If you've got N8N flows and it's generating you a load of content, then edit, right? Be the human in the loop. Take them, and then if they are generating 50 videos or whatever they're doing, and I don't know if you've done this yet, but I've done it plenty of times. You get fatigued. You start going through and go, fucking hell, is there going to be... In the end, you beg for something to be good, is that you start picking out stuff from the least shit output and go, okay, that will do, because you're being tortured. Your soul gets tortured as you go through, and you have to look through them all. You listen to them. Do I like that? Well, it's all right. You know, it's AI. It did cost a lot of money, but it costs you your time, right? Your time, because in order for you to earn money, you have to invest your time and attention in order to access and get that money. So where you put your time and attention is going to be important. So if you look at going, okay, yeah, I can do this and I can get 50 videos, some poor bastard has got to sit through that slop, right? And it's not fun. But let's say that the slop that it's produced of the 50 videos, that slop, some of it can be rescued. So there's an argument there that you can get all the slop stuff, generate it. Someone's got to go through it and pick through the bones, but there'll be some gold in there somewhere, right? You know, I can't remember what the saying is, but there's always going to be some, you know, one man's gold is another man's rubbish, right? But I will start to, I'm going to start trying to roll out for next week. I just want to make sure that I can onboard people properly. Happy to get feedback. Again, this is no slight on automation. I do it, but I think there is a time and a place for it, everything. And to be honest, look, some people are doing everything automated end to end, and respectfully, they don't know any different, because for them, it's like, oh, this is great. I can automate and I'm a good marketer and I can generate all this stuff, but they may have never shot a video. They may have never produced a video. They probably never engineered in a studio, produced a record. They may not have created anything that is gone onto a commercial release and gone through the creative process. Some will, of course, but if that is the case, then why would you build anything that would have human in the loop? Because the idea of it and the sexy part would be to just be able to generate and automate it, because that is such a nice thing to sell, right? It's going to give you a great advantage if you can go, get this, this is insane, this is a game changer, buy this up now. But that doesn't mean your customer is going to end up liking it. Yeah, that's going to be the reality of it. So let me come off of here, stop sharing. I'm always happy to have feedback. At the very beginning of the show, I'm passionate about this community and I want to see all of yous win, right? But for things to change, things have to change in order to create change. So if we can start seeing more people trying to innovate, trying to get access to things where they're getting a leg up, and there are other people in our community that can help you guys and lead you out and give you access to things that will help you, which also helps the rest of the community. Because at the end of the day, there isn't a Amazon community without the sellers, and without the sellers, there's no jobs for service providers, agencies, designers, event promoters, software companies. At the end of the day, guys, you are the fucking heartbeat of this industry. It begins with you and it ends with you. And now we need to make sure we support you. So without further ado, take care of yourself and your family. Much love. And I'll be back here again next week.